No, you're very welcome back. So sort of a catch-all GAA chat here. A few things going on, including GAA Central Council, who approved the Green proposal over the weekend. Proposal B failed at Special Congress, lest we need reminding last October. There were green and red proposals on offer at the moment. So it's green, which will go before Congress at the end of February at the Connacht Centre of Excellence in Bacon. No voices against its acceptance either. No speakers for red. Colm Keys of the Irish Independent is with us. Evening, Colm.
Hi, Joe. How are you? I thought, Joe, we weren't to have a conversation about fixtures reform or anything like that. Did we not resolve that some time ago?
It's about the time of year where you start breaking New Year's resolutions. So the Green proposal, I wasn't even aware Central Council were meeting over this. This wasn't a big hyped thing from my perspective anyway. Maybe within the diehards of GAA, this was a very significant weekend and everybody was talking about it in advance. That passed me by if it was the case. So the Green proposal seems to have got the thumbs up, and this is keeping the pre-season tournaments, keeping the league. Provincial championships are standalone, and then there is a round robin, which is the championship, 16 teams made up of provincial finalists. So there is still a carrot and an incentive there for the provincials, and then standings in the league. So this is deemed the less radical of the two, of green and red column. Is that right?
It would be, Joe, yeah. And I suppose the importance of the Central Council meeting was that the delegates there were to decide on one option and to go forward with unity to Congress. So this gives it not just a very good chance, in all probability this will be carried at Congress once it cleared the hurdle of Central Council. So now that it has Central Council backing and Provincial Council backing, because the vice chairs of all the provincial councils were on the committee that brought this forward from the Special Congress last October. Surprisingly enough, the Gaelic Players Association, their membership is also backed it too. So really all the ducks are in a row for this change to be implemented. And as you said, it is the less radical. It's really an expanded version of what's in place this year with the split between Sam Maguire and the Tailteann Cup. The only difference being is that there's a pathway for league, for the best teams in the league, the top 8 teams in the league, and the provincial finalists, the 8 provincial finalists. They go forward to the Sam Maguire competition, make up the 16 for round robin, and that's replicated for the Tailteann Cup. 4 groups of 4 round robin for 16 teams below that, which are the next 16 teams in the league that don't include the provincial finalists. So really, it's an expanded version. It means a lot more championship games. By my reckoning, there'll be 99 championship games between Tailteann Cup, provincial championships, and Sam Maguire in 2023, if and when this motion is carried. So it increases the volume of games, but to me, it doesn't really change much from what's there, apart from that pathway from the league to the championship, linking the two competitions together. It's an expanded version of what's there this year.
And do you have a certain disappointment over that?
Well, I favoured the playing of the league in the championship, and I know get people who say that the league is the best competition. Why change it and don't fix what's not broken? But if it's the best competition, why not play it at the best time of the year? You look at last year's league, played before no crowds. It was played in summertime, and it produced the highest scores, aggregate scores per match ever, over 36 points per match last year. By comparison, the nearest before that was 33. So it does produce better, faster flowing football, the league competition. Naturally enough, it's in the summertime. So your best competition really, to my mind, should be in the summertime. Notwithstanding that, I'd reserve judgment, because I think the round robin competition, unlike other round robin competitions, I think will throw up some interest. But it is a hectic schedule. It really will be a hectic schedule to be able to fit 99 championship games into, from where early April into the third weekend in July. That's going to be a real challenge. Even to get referees and linesmen and all of that on a consistent basis, that's challenging enough. So it's going to leave teams at breakneck speed right through the league and into the early stages of the championship.
Yeah.
And it remains to be seen how successful it was. I just had a preference. I thought Proposal B was good. I the provincial round robin championships would have worked, despite the misgivings of the provincial officers. Here, their provincial championships are shoehorned into 5 weekends. That's pretty tight from where it is now, over 7 weekends. I think a provincial round robin league could have been integrated with a championship. You could have had an overlap between the championship and league and see how that goes. I still think that proposal B, as we know it, that was the red proposal. I think in a number of years' time, that'll be dusted down off the shelf and revisited at some stage, because this feels like a temporary fix that players, management, everybody will be looking for more in time.
Yeah, there's a real degree of being pragmatic here at the moment, it feels like. Interestingly, the GPA, they said that they consulted with teams all around the country and 70% of squads were in favour of the green proposal as opposed to 15 in favour of red, which surprised me. Unless there is a degree of, like I said, pragmatism on the part of players now, and they understand realistically what they're likely to get over the line and not likely to get over the line. And for them, each year is valuable.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's pragmatism all around, because you had to take the creators of the green proposal, and it stems back to what the former GA president, Sean Kelly, floated in 2012. And it really is derived from that. He was the first to propose that split between a Sam Maguire and, well, it was the Tommy Murphy Cup, as he was advocating at the time, because he was behind that in the previous decade. But he did advocate this, and it has been added to, and it came in before this committee. And they had to be pragmatic about this too, because while Proposal B got 50.7% of the vote at Special Congress, they had to recognise that there was still a large body there that wanted retention of the provincial championships in some format. So they ticked a lot of boxes, there is no doubt about that, and they brought forward the most realistic proposal that is going to get through to bring some reform to the season. Now, it's not, as we said, it's not a radical reform.
Yeah.
It's expanded. It's a very, very heavy, top heavy with games. 99 games really is a lot, and that's before the 112 or 116 league games. So that's a huge intercounty programme for the first 6.5, 7 months of the year. Well over 200 games, and I'm not so sure the pre-season competitions as we know them will be incorporated into that. I think they will be set aside. I could not see them being played with that schedule of games next year. On
fixture congestion then, it applies to hurling as well. So Brian Lohan was speaking yesterday at Cusack Park after Limerick beat his Clare side in the hurling to win the Munster Hurling Cup. About 8,000 at Cusack Park. Limerick 27 points to 18 winners. But Brian Lohan was talking afterwards about the hurling format, let alone the 99 games in football. He was saying, I'd love to see the All-Ireland go back to September. I don't know why they're trying to rush to get the championships over as quickly as possible. This is on the back page of The Sun. And he was saying as well, many counties curtail fixtures in August anyway due to holidays. So he said the argument is about clubs. But when the players go back to their clubs in those first 6 weeks, there's nothing happening. And that was certainly the case in Clare last year. He was saying of the format, because we're going back to the round robin and the hurling this year. Once it starts, it comes thick and fast. You also have 5 league games, very little break in between them. I don't know why there's such a rush to get the thing over with. I can't see why we couldn't have 6 weeks of the round robin rather than 5, for instance. What are your thoughts on the fact that by July, the intercounty season disappears for 6 months from our screens and from just, you know, the national conversation? The club game, for all that we try and prop it up, is just never going to replace that in terms of interest. And Mick Foley had a piece a few weeks back in the Sunday Times where he was showing TV figures which just aren't good for club. Like, the interest is there, but really only to a point, to be honest. Are we fairly wedded to July? I understand the logic for the 99% of participants, so I'm not saying let's go back to, you know, running on into September and October if they're replays. But what are your thoughts on intercounty gone by July, wrapped up, done?
Well, that's the side effect of, you know, Gaelic games is a participation sport. I know that we in the media talk about shop windows and about TV numbers and popularity and all that. But first and foremost, Joe, it's a participation sport, and lots of teams and club teams want to have their best players available for as much of the season as possible. And I suppose this was the compromise. I do think there will be a bit of flexibility in time, as Brian Lohan acknowledged. Not much goes on in August, but a lot of teams, a lot of counties will have to start their club programmes in August to meet the Leinster club or the provincial club deadlines that there will be at the end of October to have to have a competing team, to be able to finish the club championships in a reasonable time, maybe in early January or the middle of January, when the club season will close off. So there's going to be a slight overlap. You cannot simply have all these competitions and fit them into a reasonable time frame without some compromise. And the compromise here is that another month, but it's actually 6 weeks. But I do think there will be flexibility in time. The All-Ireland finals probably will go back maybe to the bank holiday weekend in August. I think in time it'll settle down around that. But they're the compromises, because obviously there are far less intercounty players and far more club players, and they must get their opportunity to have meaningful seasons with as many of their players as possible, and that includes intercounty players who are not available to them and would not be available if you went back to September. There isn't a chance that those players would be available, or managers, intercounty managers, would make them available for much of the season. If you were trying to integrate club and county in between, it was done before, and have a club window in April, it just didn't work out because there was too many complications, too many aggravations, and officials were stuck in the middle trying to smooth things out between managers and clubs. And it was actually a toxic environment for a while there. And I think it was recognised really that the seasons need to split. Now, maybe the split is a bit too acute, and there probably is that flexibility to increase. But I don't see All-Ireland finals returning to September. Certainly I don't see it again. I think they're definitely locked down into late July. I think it'll probably go back to August. Eventually it'll settle around then.
Yeah, maybe that's a better balance. It's a real predicament, and it's an age-old one increasingly as intercounty commitments have blossomed over the last 30, 20 years in particular. It's just...
It is. That's really what's driven it, is that intercounty commitments have got greater. And that little compromise that may have been there from intercounty managers, because the season is getting tighter, because the number of fixtures are now increasing. I mean, where could you, in the current schedule now with a round robin on top of provincial championships in the league, where would you get the opportunity to play club fixtures in that space? You just don't. And it's, as I said at the outset, it's breakneck speed. It's almost that. I'd imagine the game to training ratio, it was at 1-13. I remember a number of years back, maybe 10 decade or more ago, the game to training ratio was 1-13. I'd imagine that'll be something like halved in the current climate, now that we think a new fixture schedule with expanded round robin. There'd be a minimum. I would imagine a minimum of 11 games for every intercounty team, 7 league, 1 in the provincial championship, and then 3 round robin games for everybody. So that's a big programme.
Like I said, it's a predicament. I think that it has to be done to serve the 99% of participants, the split season. There's no doubt, and I was supportive of that for sure. It just feels like such a pity when the intercounty game is really what grips the country at large, that it does disappear for so long. And I feel a touch uneasy about that as well. And saying you like intercounty is now almost, it's like you're almost afraid to admit it. But like, that's the peak of the game, and you see the best players going against each other, and you get this level of continuity, and you're familiar with the players and just the club. It's funny. I detect a real pressure. Maybe it's a media pressure on the club to somehow fill that vacuum, and can we get the figures up, and if we just sell it the right way, can we get people interested in club? I don't detect that interest out there. So many teams, like Ballyhale are an exception in that you get to know them over the years because you see them so often, but in the main it's new players that we don't recognise, and I just don't know if the country is as invested or ever will be. But then part of me think that's okay. Like, it's not, the point of club is not to grip the nation necessarily, it's to serve the 99%. But there's just a slight uneasiness about losing intercounty right across August in particular, and I think hopefully you're right when you talk about a bit more of a balance, because there's 2 aspects to the game. There is absolutely serving the 99%, but then there is a degree of shop window, there is a degree of capturing people over the months of summer as well with your intercounty product, which is just outstanding when it's good.
Yeah, I think, look, as I said, I think it will creep back a couple of weeks. It won't go far into August because it can't. the way that the season is now set up to complete the club schedules, I just don't think it can. And I think a meaningful club season has to be 3 months. It has to be August, September, October, concluding in October, so that the provincial championships. You look at the American football season. How long does that last? Does it go any more than 5.5 months?
No, it's a great point.
And it's at its apex right now, and the games are fantastic, and everybody is bought into it. And then it's gone, and it doesn't come back until back into the end of August, isn't it? Early September when it gets up and running again, and that's fine. Everybody accepts that in 2 weeks' time, the Super Bowl, 3 weeks' time, the Super Bowl will be played, and that's it. It's gone. And the intercounty season is about a month longer than that.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great example to use.
It's there. It's much more intense. I mean, the games come back, and there'll be a lot of, let's say, the games that you would ordinarily have got in August will now be at the end of June and into July. That period just after the league, as we knew before, let's say the last year, 2019, that period after the league, there was 6 or 7 weeks when there was no intercounty activity between the first weekend in April and I think the third weekend in May. There was no intercounty activity. Everybody went off and played with their clubs. A hiatus there. That's all filled now with intercounty games. The actual volume and number of games will be greater. It's just that it's more compressed now. I think we won't be able to see ourselves with the games in May, the way they're scheduled, the way it's been stacked up. When this round robin the following year comes in, there'll be so many. Games will go by, we won't know about them. That's how intense the program, which isn't great from another point of view, in that the games don't get to breathe. And except it's like that. But compromise has to be made, because the vast majority, and as I said, it's primarily a participation sport, and that has to be recognised. They're the compromises, hard compromises that have to be made, with the loss of August coming after the loss of September. But many factors involved, not least that the players were no longer being made available by intercounty managers to their clubs. The schedules had just become too tight. There was too much at stake for these teams, and it just gravitated towards this. But as I said, I think we'll be looking at maybe 2 weeks in time that it'll go back into the start, or just after the start of August. But compromise had to be made. Yeah,
no, that's all very, very fair. One last point. You're on the front page of the sports section here, writing about TJ Reid's moment of magic, and that is a club moment which does capture national attention because it's just so dramatic, and it's TJ. And he says, lucky enough, last night I put my hurl in a bucket of water just to give the base a bit more weight on it, and I'm glad it came into use, because the penalty and the free, I struck them very well. And he put his free at the end down to a bit of luck. There were that many bodies there, I just went for power. What an electric moment to be in the stadium for.
Well, I was directly behind him in the press box there, and you look at the angle and the distance, and obviously I don't know enough about this, but my sense of it was he can't score this.
Yeah,
he just can't. It was too far out. Notwithstanding the pressure that was on him, that wouldn't really be an issue. But from where he was, and it was Fintan Burke, who was outstanding for St Thomas's fullback, committed the foul on him, and you thought, he's fouled him in the right place here. In fact, I didn't even think he needed to foul him. TJ was moving away from the goals. And he fouled him in a place where he thought, I'm safe enough here, we're safe enough here. But TJ was speaking afterwards, and I got the sense from him that this was as crisp a strike as he ever struck. And I was fascinated to listen to the attention to detail and putting the boss of the hurl into the water to obviously absorb more water, give it that little extra weight. It's like a golfer, I suppose, putting in an extra screw on his driver, or just tricking it up a little bit. And that's the level of detail that he was reaching to on a Saturday night before an All-Ireland Club semi-final. I mean, he already has 5 All-Ireland Club medals, and yet he was prepared to go to these lengths to think, I'm going to soak this boss now in case I need an extra little bit of power in a certain situation over a penalty or a close range free, as happened. Ironically, he had the 2 shots, and he said himself he never hit them better. I mean, it's a magic moment for him. He's had so many fantastic moments, but if they go on and win that unprecedented 3 in a row, first time ever for a club in All-Ireland hurling, they'll look back at that moment. And indeed the goal they scored, Owen Cody's goal against St Rynagh's, that was with 30 seconds left. So they've had a couple of escape acts, and yet they're still on track. But TJ Reid a remarkable hurler, and obviously what he did in those closing stages opens up the debate about, well, is it him or Henry, or is it him or whoever else? And that debate goes on forever. But into his 30s, and he's still producing some scintillating displays. And you just wonder post TJ what Kilkenny will be like. He's such a hard act to follow. But for now, magnificent moment to be able to have the nerve to be able to do that. And obviously there's an argument as to whether there was too many bodies on the line for St Thomas's. Colin Fennelly was in the middle of it there as an obstruction. The goalkeeper had to run around him to try and face the shot, and by then it was spinning his way. So maybe they'll look at that about how they set up on the line. But from TJ's point of view, as he said himself, he never struck it better.
Colm Keys of the Irish Independent. Thanks so much, Colm.
Thanks, Joe.
Off the ball on News Talk.